Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into a really core question in conservation biology. How do we actually define where a species comes from? Native, non-native, and does that whole idea still work today? We're looking at an opinion piece by James T. Carlton. It's called The Non-Mystery of Non-Native Species.
Hmm.
Okay, let's unpack this. We all use categories, right? Bins to sort things out. It helps make sense of a messy world.
Yeah, definitely. Every field does it.
But in biology, things get complicated fast. Those lines between categories, they can seem fuzzy, which leads some critics to say, well, maybe this whole native versus non-native thing is just arbitrary, or maybe even obsolete now.
Uh-huh.
So our mission here is to really get into Carlton's argument. He pushes back hard on that. He argues that, yeah, okay, there are gray areas, exceptions exist, but the basic distinction, it's overwhelmingly practical, clear, and frankly, vital.
Absolutely. That practicality is really the heart of it.
We want to explore why this classification sticks around and why it's arguably more important than ever in our hyper-connected world.
Right. And that idea, the pragmatic utility, it's the foundation of the paper. When we create these categories, these dichotomies like native and non-native, or sometimes more complex systems, it's not about finding some kind of perfect philosophical truth about nature.
No, it's about function.
Exactly. They're tools. Essential tools for, land managers, regulatory agencies, conservation folks, people on the ground who have to make choices, often tough ones, about where to put effort and money.
The paper uses a great analogy, land and ocean.
Hmm.
I mean, nobody seriously argues that land and ocean aren't useful concepts, right?
Yeah.
But try pinpointing the exact single line where one stops and the other starts.
It's impossible.
Yeah, you've got that fuzzy bit in between, the superlittoral zone, the high beach, where, like, sea creatures can't live long out of water, but land plants can't handle the salt and inundation. It's this classic ecotone, neither fish nor fowl, so to speak.
And that's the whole point Carlton's making. That fuzzy boundary, the ecotone, it doesn't make the larger categories useless. Ocean and land are still incredibly useful for, navigation, for laws, for managing resources.
Well, the same logic applies here.
Precisely. Just because nature has exceptions, these tiny gradations, these fuzzy bits, it doesn't mean we just throw up our hands and say finding patterns is impossible. And it certainly doesn't mean there's some deep mystery, like the title says, about classifying most species as either native or non-native. For the vast majority, it's quite clear.
Okay, so if the goal is pragmatic,
Right.
simplify, manage, find patterns, how do scientists actually do it? How do they draw that line? It can't just be a gut feeling.
Oh, definitely not. It involves a, frankly, incredible amount of historical detective work. Carlton points out there are thousands, literally thousands of pages in scientific journals just dedicated to figuring out the origin of species.
Wow.
Researchers pull evidence from, almost everywhere. Paleontology, archaeology, digging into historical biology records, human cultural history, looking at biogeography patterns.
So like old maps and trade routes, too.
Yeah, potentially. Plus, community ecology, evolutionary biology, and of course, molecular genetics now plays a huge role. DNA evidence.
That's amazing. It sounds like piecing together a cold case that's centuries or millennia old just to say if this particular barnacle belongs here.
That's a pretty good way to put it. And all that deep investigation, that's what defines the terms. The goal is to figure out, is a species native? Meaning, can we show it was present in prehistoric time? Or is it non-native, introduced by human activity, usually significant human activity, in historic time?
Ah, okay. So there's a time component linked to human impact.
Yes. That dividing line between historic and prehistoric, it often connects to major shifts in human movement, like the start of global colonization, the invention of steam power, basically the era when humans started moving things, including organisms, around the globe on a massive scale. That's sort of the key marker for this modern debate.
Got it. So human activity is the trigger. Doesn't matter if you call it alien, exotic, non-indigenous, introduction.
Exactly. Those are all basically synonyms in this context, introduced by human activity.
Okay, but what about the ones where the jury's still out? The paper mentions cryptogenic species. This sounds like that fuzzy area, the ecotone, where critics might say, see, the system breaks down. You can't even tell for some species.
Right. Cryptogenic just means hidden origin. Species where we genuinely don't yet know if they're native or non-native based on current evidence. But Carlton flips that argument. He says recognizing these cryptogenic species doesn't undermine, or his word, impugn, the whole native and non-native concept.
He doesn't. How?
Because identifying something as cryptogenic actually strengthens the framework. It acts as a really important prompt
A prop for what?
for more research. If we realize a species we thought was native or maybe didn't even think about is actually cryptogenic, well, that tells us we need to do the historical digging, the genetic studies to figure it out.
Ah, I see. So finding the true history of that species helps understand the whole community better.
Precisely. Knowing the community's actual history is vital for any sensible conservation or restoration or preservation work. So, an unknown origin isn't a failure of the category system. It's basically a sign saying, more research needed here. It's homework.
That's a really interesting perspective. It reframes the uncertainty. Okay, let's switch gears a bit and look at the arguments Carlton specifically tries to reject. He calls them non-germane counterarguments. Straw men, basically.
Yeah, arguments that kind of miss the point of the definition itself.
The first one is about impact. The argument goes, native species can also cause big problems, ecologically or economically. So why focus on origin? Shouldn't we just manage based on impact, regardless of where it came from?
And this is where Carlton draws a very, very clear line. He says the impact a species has, good, bad, or indifferent, has absolutely nothing, zero, to do with the definition of whether it's native or not.
They're two separate things.
Totally separate issues. Defining origin is step 1. Assessing impact and deciding on management is step 2 or 3. Plus, this idea that managers just ignore problematic native species, it's just not true. Think about native agricultural pests or, native insects that carry diseases. We spend a lot of time and money managing native species that cause problems for human health or economies.
Right. So focusing only on impact is kind of a distraction from the definitional question itself.
Exactly. It muddies the waters.
Okay, the second major critique he tackles is about movement. The argument that species have always moved around
Oh,
naturally.
yes, the everything's always changing argument.
Distribution shifts, species move along coastlines, climate change pushes ranges around over millions of years. So isn't what's happening now just a maybe faster version of that natural process?
And Carlton says, well, yes, natural shifting happens. That's basic evolutionary biology and biogeography. But the scale and the mechanism of modern human-driven movement makes those older natural processes almost irrelevant to the current problem. They're not comparable.
What's the fundamental difference then?
It's our technological capacity. What's fascinating here is our ability now to move basically any species anywhere on Earth, potentially within 24 hours.
Like putting something on a plane.
Exactly. Or in the ballast water of a ship or stuck to cargo. This speed, this volume, this reach, it has absolutely no precedent in the entire history of life on Earth. None.
And it's not just faster.
No. It's also about barriers. Natural processes might shift species ranges gradually along a continent, maybe, but human transport, it leaps across what were previously impenetrable geographic barriers. We're talking oceans, high mountain ranges, vast deserts, things that kept ecosystems separate for millions of years.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We're breaching those ancient walls.
Precisely. And when we artificially breach those barriers, we're not just speeding up natural change, we are fundamentally altering the rules of the game for ecosystems in a way that slow natural climate shifts or range expansions just don't.
Okay, so that's why the distinction matters so much in practice. Because most of the non-native species causing major ecological headaches.
Yeah.
They simply wouldn't be here, wherever here is, without us physically moving them across those massive barriers.
Correct. And the consequences really underscore why making the distinction is crucial. We have devastating real-world examples. You mentioned zebra mussels, Dreissena polymorpha. They arrived in North America, likely in ballast water, and have just completely re-engineered aquatic ecosystems, costing billions in damage to infrastructure like water pipes.
Billions, wow.
Or think about raccoons, Procyon loader, cute maybe in North America where they're native, but introduced into Japan, they've become a serious pest, impacting native wildlife and agriculture.
And it's not just ecological damage, is it? The paper brings up human health and history, too.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge part of it. The sheer number of diseases, parasites, pathogens that have been moved around the globe by humans is staggering. Carlton uses the example of the fungus, well, it's an umiseed technically, Phytophthora infestans, potato blight.
Ah, the Irish potato famine.
Exactly. That organism came from the New World. Its introduction into Europe led directly to the Great Famine in mid-19th century Ireland, a catastrophe that completely changed that country's history, triggered mass emigration. These aren't small things. These are major historical events driven by moving organisms across barriers they couldn't cross naturally.
And because we caused this through our technology and movement,
We're stuck with the consequences.
yeah, we're now forced to deal with the fallout, the environmental damage, the economic costs, the threats to human health. And managing all that,
Mhm.
it's incredibly expensive.
The costs are enormous.
Yeah.
And that's a critical piece of evidence, really. It shows this isn't just some abstract academic debate. In the United States alone, hundreds of millions of dollars are spent every year just trying to control or mitigate the impacts of non-native species
Hundreds of millions.
annually.
Yep. Those costs are a direct consequence of our ability to transport life across barriers.
Mm-hmm.
And they totally justify why we need these categories, native and non-native, to even begin to manage the problem.
Mm.
So ultimately, the fact that non-native species exist and that we need ways to categorize them, it's not a mystery. It's not some flaw in biological thinking. It's a straightforward, pragmatic necessity. It's driven entirely by this unprecedented scale and speed of global human transport. We maybe needed the categories before, sure, but now, with life being shuffled around the planet constantly, we need them more urgently than ever.
That makes perfect sense. So what does this all mean? It means the utility of this native-on-native distinction isn't just about looking backward at history. It's fundamentally about the future, isn't it?
Very much so. We are, or should be, incredibly motivated to prevent the next big invasion. And to do that effectively, we need a clear standard for what actually counts as an introduction, what's new here because of us.
Mm-hmm.
Because the potential impacts of future invasions, well, they could be even worse than what we've already seen. And that risk alone justifies continuing to use and refine this whole concept.
Absolutely. Prevention relies on knowing what's what.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on. Think back to that idea of a cryptogenic species one where we don't yet know its origins. We learned that that's not a failure of the system, but actually an invitation, a prompt for deeper investigation. So consider this. What common species in your own local environment, maybe in a park nearby, or even your backyard, might actually be cryptogenic right now? We just don't know its full history. What could we learn if we did the deep historical and genetic research? And how might knowing its true story native or introduced long ago actually help conservation efforts right where you live? Something to think about.